Some people juggle while others whistle. And then there are a few who can echolocate, read 2 pages at the same time, or even feel a touch on their own skin when they see someone else being touched. I'm Mike with List 25, and these are 25 rare skills only 1% of humans have. 25. Reading 2 pages at once. Kim Peek, the man who inspired Rain Man, could read 2 pages at once by assigning one to each eye. He is the only person in the world known to have had this ability. Doctors discovered that he was born without the usual bundle of fibers that link the brain's hemispheres, which left each side working more independently than normal. That unusual wiring let him run 2 separate streams of text at full speed and store almost all of it. He could finish a page in about 10 seconds and wrap up an entire book in an hour. His recall was just as impressive. He had no trouble pulling up facts from thousands of books, maps, and directories, the same way the rest of us remember the plot of a movie. Kim passed away at 58 in 2009 after spending much of his life traveling with his father, meeting students and scientists who wanted to see the way he processed information for themselves. 24. Human echolocation. A small number of blind people have learned to navigate the world the same way bats and dolphins do. They make sharp mouth clicks and listen to the echoes bouncing off the walls, doorways, cars, or even trees. Now, most people who are blind use some form of echolocation instinctively, without noticing, but turning it into a full navigational system is incredibly rare. Expert echolocators can pick up the size and shape of an object, sense its distance, and even tell what it's made of. Some can ride bikes or hike unfamiliar trails using nothing but sound. Doctors studying the effect have found that expert echolocators use the same part of the brain for echoes that sighted people use to see. So they are literally running sound through the system most of us use for seeing. 23. Competitive eating. Only a few people have the stomach capacity, timing, and sheer determination to compete professionally in eating contests. Major League Eating only runs about 80 sanctioned events a year, and the list of people who compete at the top level is tiny compared to the thousands who try it. The training is intense. Pros stretch their stomachs by drinking huge amounts of water, chew resistance tubes to build jaw strength, and practice breathing patterns so that they can swallow at speed without losing their rhythm. To give you an idea of their numbers, Joey Chestnut once ate 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes, and Miki Sudo has cleared more than 100 wings in a single contest. The prize money is real too, with the top competitors earning between $250,000 and $500,000 a year from their winnings, sponsorships, and appearances. However, most bodies tap out long before reaching this level, which is why the pro ranks stay so small. 22. Tetrachromacy. Human eyes normally rely on 3 cone types. That design gives us a huge range of colors, but it also limits how finely we can separate one shade from another. A small group of women carries a 4th cone in the orange range, and that extra receptor lets them separate colors most of us see as identical. Only a very small number qualify as true tetrachromats. They need the mutation, plus a brain that can make use of the 4th channel, and that's where most people fall off. A confirmed tetrachromat can see hundreds of millions of colors, including small shifts in tint or hue that look identical to everyone else. There's no reliable online test for it yet, so researchers rely solely on DNA analysis and controlled lighting to confirm a case, which is why only a few have ever been identified. 21. Living calendar memory. Hyperthymesia, or HSAM, is the ability to pull up personal memories from almost any date in your life. People with it can describe where they were, what they heard, and even what they felt on that day, sometimes going back decades. It usually shows up in late childhood and doesn't involve any kind of memorization techniques. Mention a date and the memory arrives all on its own. Fewer than 100 cases have ever been confirmed, and imaging shows that the brain areas responsible for emotions and long-term memory interact in a way that may help them store memories longer and retrieve them faster. The downside is the constant recall, which means they can't set aside unpleasant events, and even neutral dates can pull them into long strings of memories. Most people with HSAM will still perform normally on lab memory tests, which makes the condition even more strange. 20. Super recognizers. Super recognizers remember faces with almost impossible accuracy, even if they only saw the person once in passing. In fact, most super recognizers grew up thinking there was something wrong with them because they kept recognizing strangers in grocery stores. Harvard researchers tested some of the first known cases and found that the skill seems hardwired, likely tied to the fusiform, which is the part of the brain that handles facial recognition. The flip side is prosopagnosia, or face blindness, where people struggle to recognize even close friends. Super recognizers sit at the opposite extreme, and police forces in the UK have started recruiting them to identify suspects on CCTV footage. 19. Human calendars and number whizzes. A savant, in medical terms, is a person with a very specific ability that rises far above their general skill set. Calendar savants, for example, can answer day-of-week questions for any date, past or future, and they do it without any counting or scribbling. The ability is so unusual that researchers have only documented it in a very small number of people, and most of them are autistic savants. Lightning calculators stand out for a different reason. They can multiply enormous numbers, extract roots, or identify primes in seconds, usually with perfect accuracy. Both of these abilities are listed as obscure savant skills, and the people who have them rely on unusual memory pathways and pattern recognition that most brains simply don't use. Their abilities remain two of the most unusual cognitive feats ever described in medicine or psychology. 18. Congenital insensitivity to pain. Going through life without pain sounds great until you understand what it really means. You see, pain is what tells you something is wrong. Without it, you would have no clue that you were hurt unless there's visible damage. A small number of people grow up like this. They never feel pain at all. One is a boy named Isaac Brown. He has had the usual childhood accidents, the falls, the cuts, even broken bones, but none of it registered for him. Isaac was born with a specific condition called congenital insensitivity to pain with anhidrosis, or CIPA. It starts with a mutation in the NTRK1 gene, which normally helps send signals about pain, temperature, and certain kinds of touch. Since those signals don't make it through, people with CIPA never feel pain. They also do not sweat. So keeping their body temperature under control is a daily job. Most families manage it with cooling steps and quick treatment for injuries because the usual warning signs are not there. 17. Ambidexterity. True ambidexterity is far rarer than most people realize. Only about 1% of people can use both hands with the same level of skill, and that means writing, throwing, drawing, or doing fine motor tasks without a preferred side. Most of us lean right or left because the brain develops a dominant hemisphere for coordination. Roughly 90% of people end up right-handed. About 10% go left, and 1% does not form a clear preference at all. Genetics does play a role, but early habits do too. Once a child starts favoring a hand, that side usually stays ahead. But someone who is naturally ambidextrous never makes that shift. Instead, they have a different writing pattern where both sides of the brain contribute equally. As for brain power, tests haven't shown any special boost, as ambidextrous people score within the same range as everyone else. 16. Extreme visual recall. Stephen Wiltshire is one of the best known examples of an autistic savant with extraordinary visual memory. A short helicopter ride over a city is all he needs. He studies the skyline for a few seconds and then can draw the entire thing from memory, down to window placements, roof shapes, and the layout of major streets. Rome, New York, Dubai, Tokyo, and Hong Kong have all been recreated this way. He even once captured the Pantheon's exact column count in a panoramic drawing of Rome. Because of that, his work is often cited as one of the clearest examples of savant visual memory in the world. 15. Tasting words. Lexicogustatory synesthesia is one of the rarest sensory crossovers we know about. A person with this condition will taste a specific flavor when they hear or read certain words, and that flavor will appear in their mouth even though nothing's there. Studies have shown that the taste often connects to the sound structure of the word or to learned associations picked up during early vocabulary development. In some cases, clusters of phonemes cue the same flavor each time. The experiences stay stable for years, which is one reason researchers treat them as a genuine perceptual event rather than imagination. The taste itself can be anything from minced beef to mint to something much less appealing. For example, the word blue has been reported to taste inky. 14. Instant musical recall. Some people can memorize a song after hearing it once, but few take that to an entirely different level. Their auditory memory is so sharp that a full orchestral piece can be absorbed and replayed straight through. The most famous example is Leslie Lemke, who sat at the piano and performed Tchaikovsky's Piano Concerto No. 1 after hearing it in a movie just once. Family and doctors say that when he hears a piece, he simply doesn't forget it. He reproduces harmonies, timing, and dynamics closely enough to match professional recordings. Outside a few case reports like his, being able to play back an entire work after a single hearing is essentially unheard of, even among elite classical musicians who practice for years. 13. X-ray vision. Yep, move over, Superman. This one is a bit off the beaten path and definitely not a verified medical phenomenon, but Natasha Demkina became a brief sensation in the early 2000s after saying she could see inside people's bodies. She described it as switching from her regular eyesight to a detailed medical view that showed internal organs. British television even brought her on air. She pointed out a sore ankle on the host and mentioned issues in the doctor's pancreas and stomach, although follow-up scans didn't confirm anything unusual. Researchers later tested her under controlled conditions. In one well-known trial, she identified 4 out of 7 medical cases. The score wasn't strong enough to support the idea of true X-ray vision, but it wasn't low enough for investigators to stop asking how she was doing it. Some experts believe that she might have picked up on people's posture, skin tone, or other cues we don't consciously track. Her skill is still heavily disputed, and she eventually returned to Russia, where she continued offering paid readings and said she hoped to connect her ability to formal medical knowledge someday. 12. Super strength. Super strength often shows up in comics because it taps into something everyone understands. Power sells. For a small number of people, that power comes built in thanks to a mutation in the gene that makes myostatin. Myostatin is the protein that tells your body to slow down muscle growth once you've built enough. If the gene doesn't work properly, that brake never kicks in. The result is unusually large, well-defined muscles paired with very low body fat, and it develops without the hours in the gym the rest of us have to endure. Only a handful of documented cases exist worldwide, and researchers study them closely. If we can understand how this mutation protects and strengthens muscles, it may help shape future treatments for conditions like muscular dystrophy. 11. Arsenic resistance. Arsenic doesn't give the human body much of a safety margin. Yet, the people of San Antonio de las Cobras in Argentina drink water that would be dangerous anywhere else. They manage it because many families in the area carry a version of the AS3MT gene that helps the body change arsenic into forms it can get rid of more easily. Researchers think this ability developed over many generations, as the community lived with naturally contaminated mountain water. The group that carries this variant is small, somewhere around 6,000 people, and it remains one of the rarest genetic defenses humans have ever developed against a toxin. 10. Natural short sleepers. Most of us drag ourselves through the day if we get anything under 7 hours of sleep. But a rare group of people live on 4 to 6 hours and they feel great doing it. I might be one of them. They're known as natural short sleepers, and some of the best studied cases involve a mutation in the gene called DEC2, which changes how the body manages sleep pressure. Families that carry it tend to move through a full sleep cycle in far less time than the rest of us. Yet, they stay alert, healthy, and stable on what would flatten most people after a week. Only a small slice of the population carries this variant, and researchers still don't know how it alters the mechanics of sleep so effectively. What they do know is that these individuals aren't forcing it. Their brains simply ask for less, and they wake up ready to go. 9. Middle ear muscle control. There's a muscle in your middle ear that fires every time you chew or hear a sudden noise, and almost everyone goes through life without realizing it exists. Then, there's the small fraction of people who can switch it on whenever they want. The tensor tympani contracts and tightens the eardrum. When someone activates it deliberately, many report a deep internal hum or something like a pressure shift. Plenty of people can wiggle their ears, not me. But reaching into the middle ear with nothing but a thought is a whole different category. Studying these individuals has helped researchers understand how the ear protects itself from sudden sound. But it also shows how little conscious access most of us have to the machinery running our senses. I can do this. Yep. This one I can do. I'm absolutely sure of it. 8. Extreme long-range vision. Natasha Demkina may have grabbed headlines for her supposed medical vision, but Veronica Sater brought something real to the table, and she has the Guinness World Record to prove it. In the early 70s, researchers at the University of Stuttgart discovered she could pick up detail at distances most of us lose to a blur. Reports from the time said she could recognize faces and shapes more than a kilometer away, a range far beyond typical human vision. She later trained as a dentist and built a normal career, which feels almost unfair when you consider how well she can spot anything on a tooth. 7. Super smell. Some people pick up the scent of a candle from across the room. Joy Milne can pick up the scent of a disease. She has hyperosmia, a rare sensitivity that gives her far stronger smell perception than the rest of us. Milne didn't grasp just how unusual her sense of smell was until she noticed a change in her husband's scent years before he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. The musky odor she picked up turned out to be a chemical change in his skin. Researchers at the University of Manchester later tested her nose against lab equipment and used her feedback to help identify volatile organic compounds linked to Parkinson's. She even smelled differences in people with REM sleep behavior disorder, a condition that sometimes appears years before Parkinson's symptoms show up. 6. Pi-Memorization. The current official record for reciting pi from memory is held by Rajveer Meena. He shouted out 70,000 digits of pi in one go while blindfolded. That number is infinitesimal compared to the trillions of digits now known, thanks to computers, but for a human brain to store and recall 70,000 random digits is still stunning. The challenge is especially intense because pi's digits are non-repeating and patternless, so rote memory doesn't cut it. You need creative mnemonic strategies. Historically, enthusiasts have pushed the boundaries even further and claimed versions of unofficial records. For example, Akira Haraguchi, a memory devotee, once recited 100,000 digits in a public event, a feat that took him over 16 hours. 5. Eidetic, or photographic memory. Most of us lose track of what we walked into a room for, so the idea of holding a perfect mental snapshot sounds incredible. Children sometimes come close. A small group of kids can study an image for a few seconds and then describe it with near-perfect detail, almost as if the picture were still in front of them. Scientists call it eidetic memory, and it disappears almost as fast as the brain develops. By adulthood, it's almost gone. Less than 1% of adults show anything that resembles true eidetic recall in controlled tests, and even then, the images aren't permanent or flawless. Researchers have looked for adults with verified photographic memory for decades and have yet to find one. 4. Mirror touch synesthesia. A person with this condition doesn't just notice when someone else is touched. Their own skin reacts as if the same thing is happening to them. If they see someone get their arm brushed, they feel a light sweep on their own arm. If a friend stubs a toe or bumps an elbow, the synesthete may get a faint echo of it in the same spot. Researchers point to an overactive mirror neuron system as the likely cause, but they still don't know why only a tiny fraction of people experience it this strongly. For some, it's mild and manageable. For others, it can become intrusive, especially when the sensation includes pain. What makes it so rare is that this mirrored touch is automatic, so it's not a learned reaction nor a burst of empathy. 3. Extreme multilingualism. There's multilingualism, and then there's whatever happens inside the minds of hyperpolyglots. These are the rare people who operate in 5, 10, or even 20 languages, and they're a rare bunch indeed. Some well-documented hyperpolyglots like Alexander Arguelles or Richard Simcott built their skills through years of study and daily immersion. Others, such as Emil Krebs, left researchers curious after scans showed unusual features in parts of the brain linked to language. So it comes down to a mix of strong memory, constant practice, and intense motivation. 2. Ultraviolet vision. People with aphakia don't have the lens that normally blocks ultraviolet light, and that's why a small number of them can actually see it. Once the lens is gone, UV wavelengths make it all the way to the retina. Some people describe new shades, sharper contrasts, or a blue-violet tint on surfaces most of us see as plain white. Claude Monet is one of the most famous examples. After a cataract surgery left one of his eyes without a lens, he started noticing colors he had never worked with before. His later painting shifted because he could suddenly see UV reflections on water lilies and petals. Aphakia is rare, and UV vision is even rarer with that group, but it proves that the human eye is capable of far more than our everyday spectrum would suggest. 1. Perfect pitch. Perfect pitch, or absolute pitch, is the ability to name any note without hearing a reference first. Someone with it can tell you that the washing machine beeps an F, or that a car horn honks at B flat. They can also name the key of a song the moment it starts, and usually stay accurate across instruments, octaves, and even weird background noises. It appears more often in musicians who started training very young, and in speakers of tonal languages where pitch carries meaning in everyday speech. For most of us, though, matching a note means hunting around on a piano. For them, pitch comes labeled out of the box and stays that way for life. And that is a wrap. My brain is officially tapping out. But seriously, you guys are fantastic, and I really appreciate you being here. And if you haven't hit like or subscribed yet, I hope I've won you over. And if you want to stick around, check out our related video, 25 Real Life X-Men. It'll fit right in your evening and probably make you question your own skill set. That link should appear just about here. Thank you again so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.